here we are with the Pulsar 8200 equalizer. So this is a recreation of a really famous mastering equalizer that's also always been used on instruments as well. It was one of the, not the first, but one of the first fully parametric equalizers. But a huge amount of effort was put into the electronics to make it sound really, really good. And it was George Massenburg who designed it. He's a very famous designer and engineer. And it was called the GML 8200. And this is a very faithful, accurate recreation of that equalizer with a lot of extra features that make it really usable for modern mixing. So before we get started, if you can like the video and subscribe and press the thanks button, really helps keep the channel going, and all of that's really appreciated. And so let's get back into it. Companies like Pulsar, who are known for creating very accurate emulations and things which sound really, in my view, they're up there at the very top end of hardware emulation. They really sound a cut above, and there's some other manufacturers that are also up at that top end. But I've always felt that Pulsar, to my ears, are really up there. And so let's have a look. I'm going to go through the controls, and then we're going to try it on in a mastering context, and then on some individual instruments. We'll look at drums and bass. So we've got here two identical sides: low frequency, low mid, mid, and high frequency. Same on both sides. And then down here we've got high and low pass filters, a sub filter, a tilt, and an air, and then a middle section. So I'm going to start with looking at the basic EQs here. Now you can move these this way, or you can grab the nodes in a modern way. But if you prefer to use the knobs, you can do that. Really handy cue by just moving your mouse wheel. And you can do it here, of course, and a frequency and everything else, just like you'd expect. Plus, you've got a pop-up here which allows you to do it numerically here if you want. Turn it off, reset it. Useful stuff like that. All really good. What you'd expect, the high-end kind of modern EQ features. So that's all fantastic. And you can alt-click to reset things as well here. So that's all great. Now, by default, the high is a high shelf, the high frequency, but you can turn it to a bell and change the cue like that. Low frequency, same thing, it's a shelf, but you can turn it into a bell just by doing this. So that's all really great. And then we also have a built-in sort of shelf. There is a shelf filter, it's called air, and it's a fairly steep high shelf, but it's also got a little dip down here, kind of a Pultec style thing, so that as you boost it up here, you get a de-emphasis of the frequencies that might be getting a bit harsh. That's very useful. This is at a preset frequency. Now you'll notice if I pull this way up, the scale changes, if you see over on the left here, because it automatically changes. You can turn that off if you want and just set it to a certain scale, like that if you prefer. That's, again, lots of really careful thinking and details gone into this. It's very impressive and very polished and slickly done. So we've got that. We've got the tilt, which, as you'd expect, tilts everything. That's around a set frequency. Can be useful. We've got a sub, which is the same idea as the shelf. It dips as you boost, a bit more significantly than the air one does. Again, like a Pultec style idea. Can be very useful. So you've got a big range of EQs here. Now the center section. So here, got a lot of really useful features that go beyond the hardware. And in fact, this whole section at the bottom here is not on the hardware. It's basically the hardware has got this part here. Let's have a look at this center section. We've got power, that's the same as the bypass. I'm not going to go through everything in huge detail because there's quite a lot of little nice details here, which you can discover by reading the manual. But one of the big things is auto gain. Now that brings the gain down to level match, so that if you're boosting things or cutting things, it compensates for that, which I find really can be very useful. It doesn't always work, but it works as well as any auto gain I've seen anything else, so it's definitely a useful thing to have. It's got a de-esser. I actually really like this de-esser. I think it's a great sounding one that they've just stuck in here as an extra, but I think it stands on its own as a really great sounding de-esser. It adds quite a bit of saturation if you look in Plug-in Doctor. Without this, there is two harmonics added. It's a fairly small number of harmonics, but it's quite at a low level, and I think that's what the hardware does. The hardware is very clean, and so that's what you're getting. There may well be other things going on under the hood in terms of nonlinear or emulated behavior, which don't show up as harmonics. I know that I've been told by a number of developers, particularly with some of the newer, really amazing sounding ones, that there's a lot of stuff they're doing now which doesn't show up in Plug-in Doctor as harmonics or anything, but it is nonetheless nonlinear, interesting behavior that hardware does that they've emulated. So I think Plug-in Doctor is great, and I use it all the time, but I think it just shows you a snapshot of some things that happen, and nowadays I think there's more going on that you're not going to see there. That's what I'm getting from the manufacturers when I have more detailed conversations with them. But this, interestingly, does add quite a bit of harmonics, especially when you turn it up. And I think that adds to its effect. Adding harmonics with de-essers saturation can make it work in a nice way, and this certainly does. You can see as I move this, you can see where it's going to be, its center frequency of de-essing is. It goes down to 2K. It sounds so nice. I kind of wish you could bring it all the way down and use it as a kind of dynamic EQ all the way down, and I'm wondering, maybe there's a reason why they didn't do that. But it would be really, if there isn't a technical reason, I would say a great update would be allowing you to move that all the way down. So it's great as a de-esser or a de-harsher. I've had some situations where I've got like a harsh vocal, not just S problems, but there's a kind of harshness to it when they're singing loud, and you can find that and put it on there, and it can really, really help that, even in a master. Switch here to make it a high, so it's kind of doing everything above a certain frequency, and here it's more like a bell dynamic EQ, and this is the amount, and here is a delta thing, so you can hear exactly what it's affecting isolated, which is really useful. Mid-side, really great and useful. You can link the sides, and you can link left and right and so forth, and you see it's reflected up here as well. If I go to mid-side, same thing. It's reflected up there. You can also switch mid-side here, really useful. And of course, none of this is in the original hardware, but this is all the kind of thing we've come to expect from a modern EQ, so really great to have. This you don't see on that many EQs, but I love it when you get this on an EQ. It scales everything, so if I do a bunch of things here, it'll scale it, and that is so useful, I find. Really love that. Oh, you can turn each of these off and on independently, which is great. And you can even turn off the de-esser. So lots of really nice details. You can also shift click to solo each band, so you can use that as a way of finding a frequency. So yeah, they've really thought this through. Really, it's very at a high professional level, this plugin. Very impressive. So now let's have a listen. We'll start with the master bus, and I'm going to just play a loop here, and then I'm going to start moving the EQ in stereo mode, and then we'll do something in MS so you can have a listen. So I'm just going to play it a bit, and then I'm going to just start doing some things, and you can hear what it sounds like. So you can hear what this sounds like. To my ears, it sounds really great. You can really transform a master like this into something with a lot more of a solid punchly low end and more air. And I brought a bit of the mid-range here, cleared out a bit of the mud, and yeah, it sounds really great, works really quick and easy and well in a mastering context. I'm definitely finding myself using this in a mastering context. It does what you want it to do, and it sounds nice. So yeah, I'm impressed with this. I think it's great for the 2-bus and for mastering. So let's try something in mid-side mode. I think what I'm going to do is start with the side. I'm going to bring up some air just on the sides, pull out some of the low end to kind of mono out the bass, and then on the mid I'm going to push the bass a bit, clear out some mud, and maybe boost the mids a bit. So let's have a listen, and I'll start doing that and see how that sounds. So you can hear doing a mid-side thing, you can get a much bigger, kind of deeper stereo image, wider and deeper, and it pulls the low end together nicely. Now I'm way overdoing it here, just so that you can hear clearly what's going on. In an actual mastering context, I wouldn't push these things anything like as far. I'd be going like, 1.5 dB, or maximum 3 maybe in extreme cases, but so I'm going way over the top here just so you can hear obviously what's going on. But what's great is, you can scale it down. So you could get something and think, okay, this is sounding much better, but it's sounding a bit over the top. So pull it down and pull the whole thing down. Obviously, you shouldn't ever go that far when you're mastering, but You know, just in case you did, there's that. So let's now move over to instruments. So I'm going to move over to kick drum here. And I've got something here already set up. And I want you to just, I'm going to just solo the kick drum and have a listen, see what I've done. I'll play it without. Now this kick drum sounded very clicky, too much, and the low end was not happening enough. So just showing what you can achieve with this EQ very quickly. It took, you know, about a minute to get this. So let's have a listen. I'm going to put it in and out. So you can hear I've pulled the click way down here. What I did was I high passed. The click was way up here somewhere, and I high passed that out and then brought up a much lower part of the click. And to me that sat a lot better in the music. So let's now have a listen to this in context. Actually, we'll listen to this in context. I'll bring it in and out. So again, you might not want that, but it's really just showing how you can transform the sound of the kick into something that's a lot more kind of lower and thuddier without that high-end click. So let's have a look at the snare. And similarly with the snare, I've got something here already set up. I'm going to bring that in and out, so I'll start with that out. I'll solo the snare and have a listen to that. Let's just mess about with it so you can hear what can be done. Okay, I wouldn't use the de-esser on this, but I just thought I'd try that just so you can hear kind of what it does. Okay, so that's snare. Let's now have a look at overheads. And on this, I've done a mid side as well. So on the mid, I've pulled out some of the low end, and on the sides, probably pull out some of the low end as well. And I've done a lot of boosting on the side. So let's have a listen to this out and then in. Let's hear it in the context of the drums. So on this, I'm really using this overhead mainly to get the cymbals and the top end of the snare. So on the sides, bringing those cymbals up without bringing up the mid, which would bring up too much of the top end of the snare, and bringing up a little bit of the upper mids of the snare just to get a little bit more of that crack and presence there. A bit of mud pulled out here. So yep, nice on overhead. So I'm just going to do a final one now on the bass, just so you can see what it can do there. Here I've pulled out a little bit of mud, boosted a bit here, brought out some of the upper mids here. So I've soldered up the bass and you can hear before and after. He's done a really nice job of bringing up those upper mids without sounding harsh in any way, even though I boosted it a lot. Which is another thing I find about this EQ. It never sounds harsh, and you can boost a lot and it still sounds really good. Now this is a broad cue, that's partly why, but just in general, I think this EQ does that really well. So yeah, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please do give the video a like, ring the bell, like the video, and it's really helpful if you can press the thanks button. It really helps. All those things really help keep this channel going. So yeah, hope to see you next time.